Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive ship that had appeared on his sensors. He had been exploring the outer edges of human space when the enormous vessel simply materialized in front of his exploration ship. The alien craft was 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built, gleaming like polished silver against the black of space. "Sir, they're sending us a message," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her position at the communications console. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. This was humanity's first real contact with an alien civilization. "Put it through," Jake ordered, straightening in his captain's chair. The main screen flickered, and suddenly, he was looking at a being unlike anything he had ever imagined. The alien was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Its eyes were large and kind, and when it spoke, the words came through perfectly translated. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien said, inclining its head, in what seemed like a respectful bow. "I am Council Speaker Zeth Kari of the Galactic Harmony Council. We have been waiting for your species to develop interstellar travel so we could welcome you into our great family." Jake felt his heart racing. First contact with aliens, and they already knew about Earth. They had been watching humanity, waiting for them to advance enough for this moment. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Exploration Vessel Discovery," he replied, trying to keep his voice calm and professional. "This is indeed a historic moment for our species." Zeth Kari's face showed what appeared to be pleasure. "Indeed." "It is, Captain Morrison. Your species has reached the point where you can join the Galactic Harmony Council, an alliance of 847 different species from across the galaxy. We bring you an offer of membership, technology, and protection." The alien's words hit Jake like a physical blow. 847 species. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, and now they discovered. They were practically the last ones to join an enormous galactic community. That's incredible," Jake managed to say. 847 species? "Yes, and all living in harmony under the guidance of the Council," Zeth Kari explained. "We have eliminated war, poverty, and suffering throughout most of the galaxy. Your species would benefit greatly from joining us." Jake's communications officer was frantically recording everything while his science officer ran scans on the alien vessel. The readings were beyond anything in human understanding. The technology gap between humans and these aliens was enormous. "What would membership in your council involve?" Jake asked carefully. Zeth Kari seemed pleased by the question. "Very little burden for your species, I assure you. We would provide you with advanced technology that would solve your energy problems, cure your diseases, and extend your lifespans. We would protect you from the few hostile species that remain outside our alliance. In return, we would ask only that you accept council oversight of your military forces, agree to our population management guidelines, and adopt our standardized governmental structures." The offer was staggering. Everything humanity had struggled with for centuries, solved instantly. No more war, no more hunger, no more death from disease. Jake thought about Earth, about all the problems that plagued his home world, and here was an alien offering to fix everything. "This is far beyond my authority to decide," Jake said finally. "I would need to take this offer back to Earth's leadership." For the first time, Zeth Kari looked confused. "Take it back? But surely the benefits are obvious." "No species has ever needed time to consider council membership. The advantages are clear and immediate. Nevertheless, this is not a decision I can make alone," Jake replied firmly. "My people will need to discuss this among themselves." The alien's confusion deepened. "Discuss? But what is there to discuss? We offer you everything your species could possibly want. Advanced technology, peace, prosperity, protection. What could there be to debate?" Jake felt a strange unease growing in his stomach. The aliens seemed genuinely baffled that humans might want to think about such a momentous decision. With respect, Council Speaker, this would change everything about how humanity lives. Such a decision requires careful consideration. But why? Zethkari asked, leaning forward. In our experience, species immediately recognize the benefits of joining our civilization. We have never encountered a species that needed to think about it, as you put it. The unease in Jake's stomach grew stronger. Never encountered a species that needed to think about it. That meant every single one of those 847 species had immediately agreed to give up control of their military. Except alien population control can change their entire government structure. How long did the other species take to decide? Jake asked. Most accepted immediately upon first contact, Zethkari replied. The longest any species took was 3 of your days, and that was only because they needed time to contact their various population centers to coordinate the acceptance. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. 3 days maximum, and that was just to coordinate saying yes. No species had ever actually considered saying no. I will need to return to Earth and present. Your offer to our leadership, Jake said. They will need time to properly evaluate what you're proposing. Zethkari's expression became one of what Jake could only describe as polite bewilderment. Very well, Captain Morrison. We will wait for your response, though I confess I do not understand the delay. Perhaps your leaders will see more clearly than you do the obvious benefits of what we offer. The transmission ended, and Jake stared at the blank screen for a long moment. His crew was silent, each lost in their own thoughts about what they had just witnessed. Sir, Lieutenant Foster said quietly, did that seem wrong to you? Jake nodded slowly. 847 species, Amy, and not one of them ever said no. Maybe because it really is that good an offer, sir, suggested his science officer. Maybe, Jake replied, but his gut told him otherwise. Or maybe there's something else going on here. Something we need to understand before we make any decisions. He turned to his communications officer. Send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we need Admiral Parker and the full Leadership Council ready for immediate briefing. And tell them. Jake paused, choosing his words carefully. Tell them that humanity is about to make the most important decision in our species. History. As the Discovery began its journey back to Earth, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the Council's offer was both exactly what it appeared to be and something else entirely. The question was, what did it really mean when 847 species had never once said no? Admiral Lisa Parker stood before the emergency session of Earth United Council, her face grim as she finished reading Captain Morrison's report. The room was completely silent as the world's leaders absorbed what they had just heard. 847 species, President Maria Rodriguez said slowly, breaking the silence. And every single one joined immediately. That's what troubles me most, General Ben Carter said from his seat at the military advisory table. In all of human history, when has any group of people ever agreed on anything that quickly? Even when the choice seems obvious, there's always debate, always questions. Dr. Sam Collins, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, nodded in agreement. The captain's right to be suspicious. The fact that no species has ever taken time to consider this offer is more disturbing than reassuring. President Rodriguez looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leadership. Scientists, military officers, economists, philosophers, and representatives from every nation on Earth. So what do we think? Is this offer as good as it sounds? On the surface, yes, replied Dr. Helen Davis, the Chief Technology Advisor. They're offering solutions to every major problem we face. Clean energy, medical advances, protection from hostile aliens. It's everything we could want. But at what cost? Asked General Carter. They want control of our military, our population. And our government, that's not membership, that's surrender. Admiral Parker activated the main display, showing the analysis her team had prepared. We've run the numbers on what they're asking for. Military oversight means they decide how many ships we can build, where we can go, what weapons we can develop. Population management means they control how many children we can have and where we can live. Standardized government means our entire political system gets replaced with whatever they use. But look at what we gain, argued Dr. Collins. No more war, no more disease, no more poverty. Isn't that worth some loss of independence? Is it? Independence if we have to ask permission for everything? President Rodriguez asked quietly. The debate continued for hours. Some argued that the benefits were too great to ignore. Others worried about what humanity would lose. But underneath it all was the nagging question that Captain Morrison had raised. Why had no other species ever hesitated? 3 days later, the council ship returned to Earth's solar system. This time, Zethkari was not alone. A massive diplomatic vessel accompanied him, filled with representatives from dozens of different species. They seemed confident that Earth would now see reason. Ambassador Kate Williams, Earth's newly appointed representative to the aliens, met with the delegation aboard their ship. The experience was overwhelming. She found herself surrounded by beings of incredible diversity, all speaking in perfect harmony about the benefits of council membership. Surely your leaders have reached the obvious conclusion, Zethkari said as he showed her through the ship's vast halls. Look around you, Ambassador Williams. Beings from hundreds of worlds, all working together in perfect peace. This is what we offer your species. Kate watched the aliens as they worked. They moved with purpose and efficiency, but something about them bothered her. They seem very unified in their thinking, she said carefully. Of course, Zethkari replied, apparently not noticing her concern. When you have found the perfect system, why would you want anything different? That evening, Kate transmitted her report back to Earth. They're not lying about the benefits, she told President Rodriguez during the secure communication. Their technology is incredible, their society is peaceful, and they genuinely seem to want to help us. But there's something else. They all think exactly the same way about everything. I couldn't find a single disagreement among any of them about any topic. Back on Earth, the council session had been extended as the debate raged on. The offer was becoming more tempting as the aliens sweetened the deal. They offered better terms, more autonomy, and even suggested that Earth could maintain some of its unique cultural practices. But General Carter was growing more suspicious by the day. Notice how they keep improving the offer, he said during a private meeting with President Rodriguez. In business, when someone is that eager to make a deal, it usually means they're getting more out of it than you are. Meanwhile, humanity's military forces were quietly mobilizing. Not for war, but for the possibility that they might soon stand alone against a galaxy full of united species. General Carter had initiated secret programs to develop new weapons and defensive systems. Just in case, the turning point came when Council historian Veltar arrived on Earth. The ancient alien had come to study human culture, trying to understand why they were taking so long to decide. He spent weeks observing human society, reading their history, and talking to their scholars. Fascinating, he told Zethkari during one of their private conversations. They actually argue with each other about important decisions. Some of them want to accept our offer, others want to reject it. I have never seen such chaos in decision-making. Is this normal for pre-council species? Zethkari asked. I do not remember, Veltar admitted. It has been so long since we integrated the last species. But this level of disagreement seems inefficient. President Rodriguez finally called for the final vote. The Earth Council chamber was packed as Representatives from every nation cast their ballots. The debate had been fierce, the arguments passionate on both sides. When the votes were counted, the result was closer than anyone had expected. But in the end, one principle had swayed the decision: the right of humanity to choose its own path, even if that path led to hardship. Ambassador Williams delivered the news to the stunned alien delegation. President Rodriguez has asked me to thank the Galactic Harmony Council for their generous offer, she said formally. However, after careful consideration, humanity must respectfully decline membership at this time. The silence that followed was deafening. Seth Kari stared at her as if she had spoken in an unknown language. Around the chamber, alien representatives looked at each other in confusion and disbelief. Decline? Seth Kari finally managed. But that is impossible. No species declines council membership. The benefits are obvious, the advantages clear. You must have misunderstood something. We understand perfectly, Williams replied calmly. We simply choose differently. But why? Veltar asked, his ancient voice filled with genuine bewilderment. What could you possibly hope to gain by standing alone? Ambassador Williams looked around the room at the hundreds of alien faces, all wearing the same expression of confused shock. The right to make our own mistakes, she said simply. The right to grow at our own pace. The right to remain masters of our own destiny. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Harmony Council had heard the word no. The news of humanity's rejection spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. For the first time in recorded history, a species had said no to membership. Council chambers across the galaxy buzzed with confusion and concern as representatives tried to understand what had happened. Council War Chief Krax paced angrily before the emergency assembly on the Council's home world. His massive frame and scarred hide marked him as one of the few remaining members who remembered the old days. Before universal peace. This is unprecedented and dangerous, he growled to the gathered representatives. No species refuses the Council, ever. Perhaps they simply need more time to understand the benefits, suggested a smaller delegate from the peaceful ethereal collective. Surely they will see reason eventually. Time? Krax's voice rumbled with frustration. We have given them months already. Meanwhile, their military activity has increased by 300%. They are building weapons and fortifying their systems. This is not the behavior of a species, considering peaceful integration. Back on Earth, Commander Alex Stone reviewed the latest intelligence reports in the secure bunker beneath Earth Defense Command. The humans had indeed been busy since rejecting the Council's offer. Every available resource was being poured into military development and system defense. The aliens have been watching us closely, Stone reported to General Carter during their daily briefing. Our long-range sensors detect at least a dozen Council observation posts monitoring human space. They're not trying to hide them anymore. General. Carter studied the tactical displays showing human defensive preparations. They're probably confused by what they're seeing. We're not attacking anyone, but we're clearly preparing for war. From their perspective, that must look threatening. Dr. Helen Davis entered the briefing room carrying a stack of technical reports. The crash development programs are showing results, she announced. Engineer Tom Bradley's team has created defensive systems based on principles the Council has never encountered. If they're used to fighting species that all use the same basic technology, our different approach might give us an advantage. Different how? Commander Stone asked. They fight like a unified force, because that's what they are, Dr. Davis explained. All their species think alike, use the same strategies, the same technologies. We're developing tactics based on human history, on guerrilla warfare, asymmetric conflict, and unpredictable responses. Things that probably don't exist in there. unified galaxy. Meanwhile, the Council continued their diplomatic efforts, but with growing desperation. They offered humanity even better terms, more technology, greater autonomy within the Council structure. Each offer was met with the same polite but firm rejection from President Rodriguez and her government. The Council's confusion turned to alarm when human exploration ships began venturing further into space, establishing monitoring stations and defensive positions in previously unclaimed systems. To the Council, this looked like aggressive expansion by a hostile species. They are claiming territory that rightfully belongs to the Council, Krax argued during another emergency session. Their refusal to join us, combined with their military buildup and territorial expansion, can only mean one thing. They intend to challenge our authority in this region of space. Historian Valtar, who had spent months studying human behavior, tried to offer a different perspective. Perhaps their motivations are not what we assume. Their culture values something. They call independence very highly. They may simply be trying to secure their own space. Secure it from whom? Krax demanded. We have offered them protection and peace. If they are building defenses, it can only be to use against us. The situation grew worse when the Council attempted to establish what they called a monitoring station in the outer edges of human space. They claimed it was for mutual security and communication, but the humans saw it as an invasion of their territory. Commander Stone led the response mission personally. His small fleet of human ships approached the massive Council station, which was already partially constructed and defended by a squadron of Council vessels. Council Station. This is Commander Stone of Earth Defense. He broadcast on all frequencies. You are in human territorial space without permission. Please withdraw immediately. The Council commander's response was patronizing and dismissive. Human vessel, you do not understand galactic law. This space is designated for Council use for the security of all species in this region. Your objection is noted but overruled. What happened next shocked both sides. Instead of backing down or negotiating further, Stone's fleet attacked immediately and decisively. The human ships moved in patterns the Council had never seen before, using tactics that made no sense according to established galactic warfare principles. The Council ships were designed for the kind of formal, structured combat that had been standard for thousands of years. They expected the humans to follow the same rules, to fight in the same predictable patterns that every other species used. Instead, the humans fought like nothing the Council had ever encountered. They used deception, hit-and-run attacks, and sacrificial maneuvers that seemed to make no tactical sense, until suddenly the Council found their superior ships outmaneuvered and outfought. The battle was over in less than an hour. The Council station was destroyed, and their defending ships were either disabled or in retreat. Not a single human vessel was lost. The victory sent shockwaves through the Council. For the first time in living memory, Council forces had been defeated in battle. More disturbing was how easily it had happened. The humans had not just won, they had made the Council ships look helpless and outdated. How is this possible? Demanded the Council Supreme Leader during the emergency session that followed. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Their ships are smaller and less advanced. How did they achieve such a decisive victory? War Chief Krax studied the battle recordings with growing unease. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. Look at this maneuver here, where they sacrifice one of their ships to create an opening for the others. No rational commander would make such a choice. Unless the sacrifice was not meaningless, Veltar observed quietly. Perhaps they see value in outcomes we do not understand. The Council faced a crisis unlike any in their history. A species had not only rejected their offer of membership, but had proven capable of defeating their forces in combat. Worse, the humans showed no sign of backing down or seeking negotiation. President Rodriguez addressed the human population after news of the battle spread across Earth. "We did not seek this conflict," she said solemnly, "but we will not surrender our right to exist as free beings. The Council offers us peace at the price of our independence. We choose the harder path." Back in Council space, the debate raged about how to respond. Some advocated for overwhelming force to crush human resistance quickly. Others argued for continued diplomatic efforts. But underneath all the arguments was a growing fear that something fundamental had changed in their ordered galaxy. "What if they are not alone?" asked one representative during a closed session. "What if there are other species out there who might make the same choice if they see that resistance is possible?" For the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Harmony Council faced the possibility that their perfect unity might not be as perfect as they had believed. Humanity had not just said no to their offer. They had proven that saying no was possible. The galaxy would never be the same. Council Supreme Leader Aveth stood before the largest gathering of Council representatives in centuries. The great assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from hundreds of worlds waited to hear how their leaders would respond to the human threat. "The situation has become intolerable," Aveth announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "Not only have the humans rejected our generous offer of membership, but they have now attacked and destroyed Council forces. This aggression cannot be allowed to stand." War Chief Krax stepped forward, his battle-scarred appearance a stark reminder of the galaxy's violent past. "One propose immediate military action," he declared. "A swift, overwhelming strike that will demonstrate to the humans the futility of resistance. Once they see our full power, they will surrender and accept integration." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The logic seemed sound to species that had known only peace for millennia. Show overwhelming force, achieve quick surrender, restore order. It was how conflicts had been resolved for thousands of years. "How long do you estimate this action will take?" asked a delegate from the core worlds. "Days, perhaps weeks at most," Krax replied confidently. "The humans have shown they can win small skirmishes through unconventional tactics, but they cannot stand against the full might of the Council. We will deploy a fleet of 500 vessels, more than enough to overwhelm their primitive forces." On Earth, Admiral Chris Murphy received word of the massive Council fleet massing at the edge of human space. His tactical staff gathered around the holographic display, showing the approaching armada, their faces grim as they calculated the odds. 500 ships, reported Captain Nina Ross, his chief tactical officer, each one larger and more advanced than anything we have. By every conventional measure, we should surrender now and save lives. Conventional measures, Dr. Paul Jensen repeated thoughtfully. The human strategist had spent his career studying warfare throughout human history, looking for lessons that might apply to galactic conflict. The Council is thinking conventionally. They expect us to calculate odds, realize we're outmatched, and give up. Admiral Murphy studied the tactical display. "What do you recommend, Dr. Jensen?" "We don't fight their kind of war," Jensen replied. "We fight our kind of war. Make them come to us. Make them fight in ways they don't understand. Make them pay for every system, every planet, every ship." The Council fleet entered human space with great ceremony. Krax himself commanded the flagship, certain that this show of force would end the conflict quickly. They broadcast ultimatums to every human colony, demanding immediate surrender and promising mercy for those who complied. The human response surprised them. Instead of massing their forces for a decisive battle, the humans scattered. Small groups of ships appeared and disappeared throughout human space, striking quickly at isolated Council vessels before vanishing again. "What are they doing?" demanded Krax as reports flooded in of hit-and-run attacks across a dozen systems. "Why won't they stand and fight?" Perhaps they are trying to delay the inevitable, suggested his tactical advisor. These small attacks cannot seriously damage our fleet. But the small attacks were having an effect. Each strike was carefully planned to cause maximum confusion and minimum human losses. Council ships found themselves chasing shadows, arriving at battle sites to find only debris and empty space. Captain Ross led one of the most successful human strike teams. Her small squadron had developed tactics that made no sense to Council military doctrine. They would appear to retreat, drawing Council ships into pursuit, then suddenly turn and attack in ways that violated every principle of logical warfare. "They're getting frustrated," Ross reported to Admiral Murphy after another successful raid. "Their commanders keep trying to force us into conventional battles, but we won't cooperate. It's like they don't know how to fight an enemy that won't follow their rules." The Council's frustration turned to alarm as the conflict dragged on. What was supposed to be a quick police action became a grinding war of attrition. Worse, the human tactics were starting to spread fear among Council crews, who had never faced an enemy that seemed to welcome death in pursuit of victory. Dr. Jensen's strategies proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that had forgotten how to truly fight. While the Council had superior technology and numbers, they had grown soft during millennia of peace. Their crews panicked when faced with human tactics that prioritized mission success over individual survival. The turning point came when Captain Roy Mitchell led a desperate defense of the outer colonies. Outnumbered 50-1, his small fleet faced a Council force that should have swept them aside in minutes. Instead, Mitchell's ships fought with a fury that shocked the Council commanders. When his flagship was crippled, Mitchell rammed it into the Council command vessel rather than surrender. When human ships ran out of ammunition, they used themselves as weapons. The Council force retreated in confusion, having suffered massive casualties against an enemy they couldn't understand. The reports that reached Cracks were almost unbelievable. Humans continuing to fight when victory was impossible, choosing death over surrender, turning defeat into costly victories through pure determination. "They fight like madmen," one Council captain reported. When their ship was disabled, the crew kept fighting with hand weapons. "When we boarded their vessel, they destroyed their own systems rather than let us capture them. I have never seen such fanatical resistance." Back on the Council home world, Supreme Leader Avith reviewed the casualty reports with growing horror. The swift victory they had expected was turning into a nightmare. Hundreds of Council ships had been damaged or destroyed, thousands of crew. Members were dead or wounded, and the humans showed no sign of weakening. "How is this possible?" Avith demanded during an emergency Council session. "We have overwhelming superiority in every measurable category. How are they inflicting such losses on our forces?" War Chief Cracks, his confidence shaken by the unexpected resistance, struggled to explain. "They do not fight rationally," he said. "They sacrifice valuable ships for minor tactical advantages. They continue attacking even when victory is impossible. They seem to prefer death to surrender." Council historian Valtar, who had been quietly studying the conflict, finally spoke. "Perhaps that is the answer," he said. "They are not fighting to win in the way we understand victory. They are fighting to remain free, and they value that freedom more than their lives." The war continued for months, far longer than anyone in the Council had expected. Each battle taught them more about human determination and less about how to defeat it. The humans were losing by every traditional measure, but they were making the Council pay such a terrible price that victory felt more like defeat. As reports of the prolonged conflict spread throughout Council space, something unprecedented began to happen. Member species that had lived in peace for generations started asking questions they had never thought to ask before. Why are the humans fighting so hard against something that would benefit them? Wondered representatives from worlds that had joined the Council millennia ago. What do they value more than peace and prosperity? For the first time in 50,000 years, the foundations of council society were being questioned. The humans had not just refused to surrender. They had made surrender seem like a betrayal of something precious that could not be measured in ships or technology. The galaxy was learning what it meant when a species chose freedom over safety, even when that choice led to suffering and death. Council Elder Queth had lived for over 3,000 years, making him one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. He had witnessed the formation of the Galactic Harmony Council, seen hundreds of species join peacefully, and believed deeply in the unity they had created. But now, as he watched the reports from the human conflict, doubts crept into his ancient mind. The war had been raging for 2 years. What should have been a simple police action had become the longest military engagement in Council history. The humans were losing by every measure that mattered, yet they continued to fight with a determination that baffled every Council strategist. "Elder Queth," came a voice from behind him. He turned to see War Chief Krax approaching, his once proud bearing now showing signs of exhaustion and frustration. "War Chief," Queth acknowledged, "I have been reviewing the latest casualty reports. The numbers are troubling." Krax's expression darkened. "We are winning," he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "Human resistance grows weaker with each passing month. Their fleet is reduced to scattered remnants. Their colonies are isolated and cut off from support. And yet they continue to fight," Queth observed quietly. "Why do you think that is?" The question hung in the air between them. It was the same question that had begun to spread throughout Council space, whispered in private conversations and debated in closed sessions. On Earth, President Victor Lane stood in the ruins of what had once been New Geneva, one of humanity's most important colonies. The Council bombardment had left the city in rubble, but somehow the human survivors had managed to evacuate most of the population before the attack. "Sir?" Admiral Grace Thompson approached, her uniform torn and stained from the recent battle. "We've received word from the outer colonies. The Martian Defense Fleet engaged a Council squadron near Titan. We lost 3 ships, but we stopped them from reaching the inner system." President Lane nodded wearily. "Every victory came at a terrible cost, but they kept fighting because the alternative was unthinkable." "How many ships do we have left?" "Maybe 200 operational vessels across all fleets," Thompson replied honestly. "The Council still has over 2,000. But, sir, something interesting is happening. Our intelligence reports suggest that some Council species are beginning to question the war." Lane looked up with interest. "What kind of questions?" "Why their own governments are spending so many resources to force a single species to join them. Why they need to use violence to create peace. Why the humans would rather die than accept what the Council calls paradise." Meanwhile, Captain Roy Mitchell had become something of a legend throughout human space. His willingness to sacrifice his own ship rather than surrender had inspired countless other human commanders to similar acts of defiance. But Mitchell himself was struggling with the weight of what his actions had started in the medical bay of the salvaged human base on Europa. Mitchell recovered from his injuries while watching news feeds from across the galaxy. What he saw surprised him. Council species that had been unified for millennia were beginning to show cracks in their perfect harmony. "Captain," Dr. Helen Davis entered the medical bay with a data pad in her hands. "You need to see this intelligence report. It's from deep inside Council space." Mitchell read the report with growing amazement. 3 different Council species had formally requested permission to review their membership agreements for the first time in centuries. Dozens of others were asking questions about individual rights and species autonomy that hadn't been discussed for thousands of years. "We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore," Mitchell realized. "We're showing other species that resistance is possible. Back in council space, Elder Queth called for a private meeting with Supreme Leader Avith. The two ancient beings met in Avith's personal chambers, away from the politics and pressure of the main assembly. The war must end, Queth said without preamble, not because we cannot win, but because we are losing something more valuable than territory or resources. Avith looked puzzled. What do you mean? Our unity was built on the belief that our way was the only way, that peace and prosperity were worth any price. But the humans are showing the galaxy that there might be things more valuable than peace, more valuable than prosperity, such as the right to choose your own path, even if that path leads to suffering, the right to make your own mistakes, the right to be different. Queth paused, his ancient eyes reflecting centuries of wisdom. We have created a galaxy of followers, Avith, but the humans are reminding us what it means to lead. The turning point came when news reached the Council that the human colony of New Olympia had been completely surrounded by Council forces. The humans could not possibly escape or win, yet they continued to resist. The siege lasted for months, with human defenders fighting block by block, building by building, never giving up. When the colony finally fell, the Council forces found something that shook them to their core. The human defenders had not just been fighting to delay the inevitable. They had been broadcasting their struggle across the galaxy, showing every species in Council space what it looked like to fight for something you believed in, even when victory was impossible. The broadcasts had an unexpected effect. Young beings from dozens of Council species began asking their elders why their ancestors had given up their independence so easily. They wondered what their own species might have accomplished if they had been allowed to grow and develop on their own terms. Elder Queth presented his proposal to the full Council Assembly 3 months later. We offer the humans something that has not existed in this galaxy for 50,000 years, he announced to the shocked representatives. We offer them recognition as an independent sovereign power. The assembly erupted in confusion and debate. Independence was a concept that had been forgotten, a relic of the violent past that the Council had worked so hard to overcome. But if we allow the humans to remain independent, protested one delegate, other species might demand the same right. Perhaps, Queth replied calmly, that would not be such a terrible thing. The negotiations took place on neutral ground, aboard an ancient space station that had been built before the Council's formation. President Lane and Admiral Thompson represented humanity, while Elder Queth and a small delegation spoke for the Council. We do not ask you to join us, Queth said during the opening session. We ask you to teach us, to remind us what we have forgotten in our pursuit of perfect unity. President Lane studied the alien elder carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Independence. For humanity, but not isolation. You would remain free to govern yourselves, defend yourselves, and choose your own path. In return, you would serve as what you might call a loyal opposition, a voice of dissent in our unified galaxy. Admiral Thompson leaned forward. And in exchange? You remind us that unity without choice is not strength, but weakness. You show us that sometimes the greatest courage is in standing alone. You teach us that diversity of thought and approach makes us all stronger. The agreement was signed 6 months later. Humanity would remain independent, the first species in galactic history to exist outside the Council while maintaining peaceful relations with it. More importantly, the Council would begin allowing member species greater autonomy and self-determination. As President Lane prepared to return to Earth, Elder Queth approached him one final time. We offered you everything, the ancient being said quietly. Technology, peace, prosperity, protection. And you taught us that sometimes everything is not worth the price of your soul. Maybe you needed to remember what it means to stand alone. Lane replied, before you could truly understand what it means to stand together. The galaxy had been forever changed, not by conquest or surrender, but by one species' simple refusal to give up their right to choose their own destiny. In learning to respect human independence, the Council had begun to rediscover what they had lost in their pursuit of perfect unity. Freedom, it turned out, was not something that could be given. It had to be taken, defended, and sometimes died. For the humans had reminded the galaxy of that truth, and the galaxy would never be the same.